My name is Megan Carter. I'm 30 years old, and my entire world collapsed at my dad's birthday party. Picture this: a warm family gathering, laughter echoing around the room. Then, out of nowhere, my dad leaned across the table. His eyes locked onto mine as he asked, "Megan, the $200,000 I gave you, what did you do with it?" My heart stopped. 200,000? I froze, the fork slipping from my hand and clattering onto the plate. "What do you mean?" I stammered. Across the table, my sister's face drained of color. Her hands trembled as she tried to speak. The room collapsed into a heavy silence. I had been entrusted with a fortune to chase my dream of opening a fashion store, but suddenly it felt like someone in my own family had sabotaged everything. And betrayal from family? That's the deepest cut of all. Have you ever felt it? Share your story in the comments. For years, I'd been working in Chicago as a marketing coordinator for a mid-sized fashion brand. The pace was relentless: campaign pitches, looming deadlines, but through it all, I held on to a bigger dream: launching my own boutique, a place to design and sell unique clothing lines. A few months ago, my dad made that dream feel real. He transferred me $800,000, no strings attached. He told me it was my shot to build something of my own. I was stunned. His faith in me meant everything. I started saving, scouting locations in Salt Lake City, my hometown, planning to move back and start fresh. That money wasn't just cash. It was my ticket to a new life. And I was determined not to waste it. But then, just a few days ago, my sister called me out of the blue. Her voice was tight, almost mechanical, like she was reading from a script. "Dad's not feeling great," she said. "His birthday party's canceled. No need to come home." Something about it didn't sit right with me. Dad's 60th birthday wasn't just any milestone. He'd been talking about it for months, planning a huge gathering at our family home in Sugar House. Why would he suddenly cancel without telling me himself? I pressed her, asking if he was okay, but she brushed me off quickly. "It's just a cold. Don't worry." Her tone was rushed, like she couldn't wait to hang up. I ended the call with a knot in my stomach, the uneasy sense that she was hiding something. We've never been close. She's always been the one with flashy clothes, big vacations, and stories about designer bags, living a life I could never keep up with. Growing up, she'd take my things without asking, always one-upping me with her latest adventure. I'd learned to tune her out. But this call, it felt different. Why lie about Dad's party? I checked my phone, no texts, no missed calls from him. That was strange. Dad has always been the type to reach out directly, asking about my work, checking in on me. If he were sick, he would have told me himself. The thought gnawed at me. Was she covering something up? Something bigger than a canceled birthday party? I made up my mind. I was flying back to Salt Lake City no matter what. There was no way I was going to miss Dad's 60th, sick or not. I even had a gift ready. A sleek engraved watch I'd saved up for, something to show how much he truly meant to me. Booking the flight was a no-brainer. Chicago to Salt Lake is just 3 hours, and this time, nothing was going to keep me away. As I packed my bags, my mind kept circling back to my sister's call. Her words didn't fit the dad I knew, the man who had always stood by me, pushing me to chase my dreams. On impulse, I opened my bank account to check my savings, reminding myself of the $800,000 he'd given me. Gratitude swelled in my chest, until something strange caught my eye. Buried deep in my transaction history was a transfer notification I'd never noticed before. It was vague, just a reference number, no clear sender. My heart lurched. Could this be connected to my sister's call? Needing clarity, I phoned Aunt Ellen, my reliable source for family news. She's sharp, steady, never one for drama. "Canceled?" she repeated, her voice dripping with skepticism. I was at their house yesterday, and your dad was fine, planning the menu for his party. My grip tightened on the phone. Why would my sister lie about something so basic? Ellen hesitated, then added, "You know, I saw your sister with some new designer bags last week. She's been spending a lot more than usual." Her words hit me like a punch. Designer bags, flashy trips, a lifestyle that always seemed out of reach. But now I couldn't stop wondering, where was she getting the money? A dark suspicion began to take root. By the time I boarded the plane, my thoughts were spiraling. I clutched the small gift box with Dad's engraved watch, trying to focus on surprising him. But my sister's lie kept echoing in my head. This wasn't just a fib, it felt like the edge of something much bigger. 3 hours later, I landed in Salt Lake City and drove straight to Dad's house in Sugar House. The watch box was tucked safely in my bag. But when I pulled up, my jaw dropped. Cars lined the street, and golden light spilled from every window. The party wasn't canceled. My sister had lied. And I was about to find out why. Stepping inside, I was greeted by a wave of chatter and clinking glasses. Dad stood at the dining room table laughing with friends, looking perfectly healthy. Mom bustled near the kitchen, arranging plates, while my sister floated around in designer heels, her smile flawless as she charmed the guests. From across the room, Aunt Ellen spotted me and waved quickly. I forced a smile back, but my pulse was hammering. Why had my sister tried so hard to keep me away from this night? I made my way over to Dad, clutching the gift box like a lifeline. "Happy birthday," I said, handing him the watch. His face lit up as he pulled me into a tight embrace. "You didn't have to come all this way," he said warmly. But when I stepped back, I caught my sister staring at me. For the briefest moment, her eyes widened. Then she quickly turned away. Mom's gaze flicked toward her, then dropped just as fast as she fussed with a napkin. Their behavior was off, strained, like they were hiding something. I scanned the room, noticing the quick, uneasy glances between them, their movements just a little too jittery. As the evening rolled on, I stuck close to Aunt Ellen, who was stationed near the dessert table, casually sipping her wine. She's always been the one person I could count on to slice through the family drama. "I thought this was canceled," I murmured. Her eyebrows shot up as she set her glass down. "Canceled? Your dad's been planning this for weeks. Your sister's the one who said you weren't coming." My stomach twisted. So it wasn't just a lie about the party. It was a lie about me. I pressed her for more. Aunt Ellen leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Your sister's been on a real spending spree. Designer bags, jewelry, even bragging about Paris last month. I saw her at the mall, dropping thousands like it was pocket change. Paris. Thousands." My mind flashed back to her rushed phone call, her insistence that I stay in Chicago. She'd always lived big, but this was something else. Extravagant, reckless. Where was she getting that kind of money? I glanced across the room. My sister was laughing loudly with a guest, her diamond earrings flashing under the lights. Mom stood nearby, nodding along, but her smile looked forced, her hands fidgeting nervously with her bracelet. Aunt Ellen's warning from earlier echoed in my mind. My sister's flashy purchases, her sudden flood of luxury. And then that vague bank transfer buried in my account history. A chill crept over me. Was she hiding something bigger? Something that connected it all? I wanted to confront her right there in the middle of the party, but instinct told me to wait. Suspicion wasn't proof. I needed more than gut feelings. I needed the truth. As I helped clear plates, my sister brushed past me, her perfume sharp and overwhelming. "Didn't expect you here," she muttered, barely meeting my eyes. "Thought you'd be too busy in Chicago?" Her tone was sharp, defensive. I bit back a reply, watching her retreat, her heels clicking faster than before. Mom avoided me entirely, throwing herself into arranging the cake. Their secrecy hung heavy in the air. Palpable, like an invisible wall keeping me out. Aunt Ellen sidled up again, her face tight with concern. "I don't know what's going on," she whispered, "but your sister's been acting strange for weeks. And your mom? She's in on it. Whatever it is." My heart pounded. The pieces still didn't fit together. But the lies, the spending, the nervous looks, it all pointed to something big, something dangerous. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. This night was about to expose more than just birthday candles. The party buzzed on, guests laughing, music humming softly in the background. I stayed near Dad, watching him unwrap gifts, his booming laughter easing some of my tension. Still, unease gnawed at me. My sister and Mom kept their distance, their eyes darting away whenever I came near. I tried to shake it off. Dad deserved a perfect night, not a storm. Then the cake arrived. Everyone gathered around the dining table, glasses raised, smiles wide. Dad stood at the head, glowing with pride, ready to cut the first slice. I lifted my glass to toast him. But then his expression shifted. His eyes locked on mine, sharp and unyielding. "Megan," he said, his voice low but cutting through the chatter. "The $200,000 I sent you, what did you do with it?" My heart stopped. 200,000? The words tumbled out as my mind went blank. My glass slipped in my hand, nearly spilling. "What do you mean?" I stammered, my voice no louder than a whisper. The room froze. All eyes turned toward me. Dad's gaze stayed steady, piercing, waiting. My throat tightened. The $800,000 for my boutique? I knew about that. But another $200,000? When? How? Before I could respond, my sister Kristen cut in. Her voice high-pitched, shaky. "She probably just forgot, Dad," she said, forcing out a brittle laugh. "You know how busy she is in Chicago." Her hands twisted nervously, her face pale as if she'd been caught in a spotlight. My confusion sharpened into suspicion. Why was she so quick to cover for me? Dad raised his hand, slicing through her words. "Kristen, I'm asking Megan." His tone was sharp, like steel. The room shifted. Guests stirred uneasily, their murmurs dissolving into silence. Mom stood frozen beside Kristen, her wine glass clenched so tightly her knuckles whitened. Against the wall, Aunt Ellen watched, her eyes narrowing as though she'd been waiting for this moment. The air thickened, heavy and electric, as if a storm were about to crack open above us. I swallowed hard, my mind racing. "Dad, I don't know about any $200,000, I said, my voice breaking. "I got the $800,000 for my boutique, and I'm planning to use it. But this other money? I never saw it." The words hung in the room like an echo, each one pushing me closer to a truth I didn't want to face. Kristen's eyes widened. She opened her mouth to speak again, but Dad's glare stopped her cold. "Megan," he said slowly, deliberately, "I sent you and your sister $200,000 each, separate from the boutique money. It was for your future, your dreams." His gaze flicked toward Kristen, then locked back on me. "You're telling me you didn't know?" My stomach plummeted. Separate money? For both of us? I shook my head, hands trembling. "No, Dad, I swear I never got it. I never even heard about it." My voice cracked into anger and disbelief. How could I not know about $200,000? My eyes snapped to Kristen. She was gripping the edge of the table, her face paper white, her lips pressed tight. She wouldn't meet my gaze. "Dad, maybe there was a mix-up at the bank or something," she blurted, her words spilling too quickly. "You know how these things happen." But the excuse rang hollow, and the way she kept dodging my eyes only twisted the knot tighter in my chest. Mom stepped forward then, resting a hand on Kristen's arm as if to steady her. But she said nothing. Her silence was deafening, louder than any denial. Dad's jaw clenched, his eyes burning with something I'd never seen before. Betrayal, maybe, or pure fury. "Enough," he said, his voice like steel. "Megan, you're sure you didn't know?" I nodded, my throat too tight to force words out. The room was suffocating, every guest holding their breath as they watched our family splinter in real time. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about trust. And it was shattering right in front of me. The dining room seemed to shrink around us, the weight of Dad's unanswered question about the $200,000 pressing down like lead. I stood frozen, my eyes locked on Kristen, her face drained, her hands trembling. Dad's gaze flicked between us, his expression hardening as the silence dragged on, unbearable. Guests shifted uneasily, whispers rippling through the air but never breaking it. Then Dad stepped forward, his voice steady but edged with rage. "Let me make this clear," he said, addressing the room but staring directly at me and Kristen. "I sent $200,000 to each of you, separate from the money for your boutique, Megan. It was for your futures, no strings attached. I trusted you both to use it wisely." His words slammed into me like a hammer. "Another $200,000? For me?" My head spun. I'd never seen a cent, never even heard about it until this moment. I parted my lips to speak, but Dad had already turned to Kristen, his eyes narrowing. "And you, Kristen? What did you do with yours?" She faltered, her lips parting without sound. Her eyes darted toward Mom, who stood rigid, her fingers laced so tight her knuckles had gone white. The silence stretched until it broke under Kristen's trembling voice. I used it for investments, Dad. You know, smart choices." Her tone cracked, her gaze dropping to the floor. Dad's face darkened. "Investments," he repeated, each syllable sharp enough to cut glass. His eyes bore into her. "Then why did Aunt Ellen tell me you've been blowing money on designer clothes and trips to Europe?" My pulse spiked. I whipped my head toward Aunt Ellen, who gave the smallest nod, her face grim. Kristen's shoulders sagged, her mask crumbling. She shot a desperate glance at Mom, as though begging for rescue. And finally, Mom stepped forward, her voice shaking, her hand clutching Kristen's arm. "Daniel, let's not do this here," Mom pleaded, her voice thin, desperate. "We can talk privately." Dad ignored her, his eyes locked on me. "Megan, you're saying you never got your share?" I forced myself to hold his gaze, my voice barely steady. "I swear, Dad, I didn't know about it. I thought the $800,000 was all you gave me." His jaw tightened. He turned on Kristen, his voice rising like a storm. "Then where's Megan's money, Kristen? Because it sure as hell didn't get to her." Kristen's face crumpled. Her fingers twisted around her necklace, her voice a whisper. "It was a mistake. I thought it was mine, Dad. I didn't mean to." Her words cut off as Dad slammed his hand against the table. Glasses rattled, silverware jumped. "You thought?" he thundered. "You took $200,000 that wasn't yours? And spent it on what? Handbags? Vacations?" A surge of white-hot anger tore through me. My fists clenched at my sides. Years of Kristen's smug smiles, her designer bags, her endless trips. She'd been parading around on my money. I turned to Mom, desperate. "Mom!" I choked out, my voice breaking. "Did you know?" She flinched, her lips pressed into a thin, hard line. Silence. Dad's voice dropped, low and lethal. "Linda, you were in on this too, weren't you?" Mom's head jerked up, her eyes wide, panicked. "Daniel, I didn't mean for it to go this far," she stammered. "Kristen needed help, and I thought we could fix it before anyone noticed." Fix it? The words burned through me. They had stolen my future and called it a mistake. Dad's expression hardened. He pulled his phone from his pocket, his fingers steady despite the fury in his eyes. I'm calling the police, he said, his tone final. Kristen gasped, stumbling back. Dad, no, please, she cried, tears spilling down her face. Mom grabbed his arm, frantic. Daniel, don't do this. We're family. Dad shook her off, his expression colder than I'd ever seen. Family doesn't betray family. You both knew exactly what you were doing. You're done. He dialed without hesitation, his voice steady as stone. I need officers at my home in Sugar House. It's about theft. $200,000. The guests stood frozen, their faces pale. A few slipped quietly toward the door, unwilling to stay for the fallout. Dad turned back to Kristen and Mom, his words like ice. You're out of my life. Both of you. And you'll pay back every cent. Starting now. I could barely breathe. The weight of it hit me all at once. My family was breaking apart, and there was no stitching it back together. The police station was stark and cold, a harsh contrast to the warm glow of Dad's house hours earlier. I sat in a cramped waiting area, my hands clasped so tightly they ached, my mind still spinning from the chaos of the night. Dad stood a few feet away, his face carved from stone. Aunt Ellen sat beside me, flipping through a folder of documents she'd brought along, her jaw set with grim resolve. Kristen and Mom, Linda, were in separate rooms down the hall, each being questioned. The weight of everything pressed on me like lead, squeezing the air from my chest. My family had shattered in a matter of hours. An officer approached, his badge catching the glare of the fluorescent lights. Ms. Carter, we've taken statements from your sister and mother, he said, his tone calm but unyielding. You'll want to hear this. He led us to a small room with a one-way window. My stomach twisted as I looked in. Kristen sat at a metal table, her eyes swollen and red, her shoulders slumped in defeat. In the next room, through another pane of glass, Mom sat with her head bowed, her hands fidgeting endlessly in her lap. I wasn't ready for this, but I knew I had to hear the truth. The officer began with Kristen. She admitted to accessing a joint account your father set up, he said, glancing at Dad. It held funds for you and your sister, $200,000 each. She withdrew your share a few weeks ago, claiming she thought it was hers. My breath caught. A few weeks. That explained everything. The new designer wardrobe, the flashy jewelry, the trip to Milan she'd plastered all over social media. She'd been burning through my money as if it were nothing. Did she say why? I asked, my voice trembling with rage. The officer nodded. She said she needed to cover personal expenses, high-end clothes, plane tickets, luxury hotels. Most of it's gone. Maybe $10,000 left in her accounts. 10,000. My chest tightened. $200,000 meant for my future, reduced to scraps. I looked at Dad. His jaw was rigid, his eyes fixed on Kristen through the glass like he didn't even recognize her. What about my mom? I forced the words out, though I dreaded the answer. The officer flipped through his notes. Linda admitted she knew. She gave Kristen access to the account, thinking they could replace the money before anyone noticed. Replace it. My fists curled until my nails dug into my palms. They hadn't just stolen from me. They had gambled with my future. Dad gripped the back of a chair, his knuckles bone white. They had no right, he muttered, his voice raw and shaking. Aunt Ellen stepped forward, snapping open her folder. I've got proof, she said, thrusting a stack of papers at the officer. Receipts from Kristen's spending. Handbags, jewelry, first-class tickets. Thousands. I saw her at the mall myself, spending like she'd won the lottery. The officer skimmed the documents, nodding. This matches her statement. She used the money for personal purchases. No attempt to hide it once she had access. I stared at the receipts, bile rising in my throat. Chanel handbags, a Rolex watch, first-class tickets, a trip to Italy. all of it paid for with money that was meant for me. Through the glass, Kristen sat hunched over, her head buried in her hands. Gone was the confidence, the smug smile from the party. In the next room, Mom looked hollow, her shoulders sagging under the weight of what she'd done. They had planned this together. They had looked me in the eye and thought I would never find out. The officer's expression turned grave. This is a serious offense, felony theft in the second degree, under Utah law. They could face up to 15 years, plus fines, and they'll be ordered to pay restitution. He paused, his gaze shifting to me. But with most of the money gone, recovering it will be difficult. We can seize assets, cars, jewelry, but it won't cover everything. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. Justice felt hollow when the damage had already been done. The silence cracked when Dad spoke, his voice iron. I want them prosecuted, he said without hesitation. They betrayed my daughter, and I won't let it slide. The officer nodded, jotting something down. We'll move forward with charges. They'll stay here tonight, and we'll need you to provide statements. A pang of guilt flickered through me, mixed with a hardening resolve. Kristen and Linda had made their choices. Now they would face the consequences. As we left the interview room, Aunt Ellen laid a steady hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing, Megan, she said softly. I wanted to believe her, but the truth didn't taste like victory. The damage was done. My family was fractured, and so was my future. All that remained was the fight to put the pieces back together. The weeks after the station stretched out like an endless blur. I found myself in Dad's study in Sugar House, surrounded by the comfort of familiar bookshelves, yet the room felt heavy with finality. He'd asked me to come meet with his lawyer, a decision that would redraw the lines of our family forever. My hands fidgeted. The sting of Kristen and Linda's betrayal still sat raw in my chest. Susan Pierce, Dad's lawyer, arrived with quiet professionalism, her briefcase clicking as she set it on the desk. Mr. Daniels has made changes to his estate, she said, voice steady. He's ready to explain. Dad sat opposite me, exhaustion carved into his face but a firm resolve in his eyes. I've rewritten my will, he said, looking straight at me. The house, the investment funds, everything goes to you. Kristen and Linda get nothing. The sentence dropped into the room like a stone, sending ripples through me. The house, worth well over $1 million, and his real estate holdings were a fortune. Yet inheriting it under these circumstances felt empty. Are you sure, Dad? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, jaw tight. They used your money without permission, Megan. They don't deserve my trust. Susan slid the revised will across the desk. The pages were crisp, the language final. I scanned it and found my name listed as the sole beneficiary. The weight of that paper pressed down. Not only the responsibility of sudden wealth, but the painful end of any hope for reconciliation. Susan adjusted her glasses, her tone clipped and matter-of-fact. Kristen and Linda were charged with felony theft in the second degree for taking the $200,000 from the joint account. They've both been placed on probation for 36 months. She paused, glancing at Dad. They're also ordered to pay restitution. $200,000 to you, Megan, plus fines of $8,000 each. My stomach twisted. Restitution sounded fair on paper, but I knew from the police reports there had only been $10,000 left. How can they pay back what's already gone? I asked. Aunt Ellen, seated beside me, spoke before Susan could. Her voice was calm but edged with steel. Kristen tried to make it right, she said, folding her arms. She sold her Mercedes, barely a year old, and some of her designer haul. Handbags, jewelry, that Rolex she flaunted after Milan. Altogether, about $40,000. $40,000. My chest tightened. The math didn't add up. Even stripped of her luxuries, Kristen was nowhere near covering the debt. What about Linda? I asked, though I dreaded the answer. Aunt Ellen sighed. She's selling what little she has. Some jewelry, a few collectibles, maybe 10,000, if that. I leaned back in the chair, the weight of it pressing down. 50,000 scraped together between them. A quarter of what they owed. The court had already seized what remained in Kristen's accounts, but it was barely a drop in the bucket. Susan's voice cut through my thoughts. The judge issued a restitution plan. They'll pay monthly based on their income, but it could take years. If they default, they risk jail time, 1 to 3 years. Years. The word echoed in my head. Kristen and Linda, once so sure of themselves, now tethered to debt, probation, and disgrace. Dad broke the silence, his voice low but resolute. "I don't care how long it takes," he said. "They made their choices." His tone carried the weight of finality, a man who had lost faith in his wife and daughter. Behind his anger, I saw the hollow ache of betrayal. The fallout was swift. Kristen and Linda left Sugar House, unable to endure the whispers of neighbors and former friends. They retreated to a dingy apartment on the outskirts of Salt Lake City, far removed from the world they once flaunted. Kristen, who had strutted in luxury, now juggled retail shifts and late-night waitressing to scrape together her probation payments. Linda, stripped of her social circle and drained by legal fees, worked part-time clerical jobs. Her dignity eroded one paycheck at a time. Their lives had unraveled. What once glittered with wealth and indulgence was now reduced to shadows and shame. I wanted to feel something. Anger, pity, vindication. Instead, I felt nothing. Just emptiness. The money was gone. And so was the family I thought I had. Aunt Ellen reached for my hand, her grip steady, her eyes kind. "You're stronger than this, Megan. You'll build something new." Her words brushed against the hollow space in me, but they couldn't fill it. Dad rose, his shoulders squared, his voice firm. "This is your home now," he said, gesturing around the study, around the house that suddenly felt both enormous and heavy. "Make it yours." As I stepped out of the study, the truth settled in. The wealth was mine, but so was the emptiness it came with. Time has a way of softening even the sharpest edges of pain. Months after the fallout, I found myself standing in the heart of Salt Lake City, staring at the sign above my new boutique, Carter's Charm. The storefront gleamed in the morning light, its sleek windows showcasing dresses and accessories I had spent weeks curating. The $800,000 Dad entrusted to me, his gift for my future, had transformed a lifelong dream into something tangible. Opening a fashion store wasn't just a business venture, it was an act of reclamation, a way of stitching back together what betrayal had torn apart. The year leading up to this moment had been a whirlwind. After Dad rewrote his will, leaving me the Sugar House home and his investment funds, I walked away from my job in Chicago and returned to Utah. It hadn't been an easy choice. Chicago had been my refuge, my clean break from family chaos. But Salt Lake City was where my roots were, and Dad needed me as much as I needed him. Aunt Ellen, steadfast as ever, helped me settle into the house that was now mine. Together, we stripped away the ghosts of the past, filling its rooms with laughter, warmth, and memories untainted by deceit. What had once been a place of fracture became a sanctuary of renewal. Launching the boutique demanded everything I had, every ounce of energy, every sleepless night. Every dollar of that $800,000 went into securing a prime downtown location, designing the space, and sourcing a blend of local designers and international brands. The first months were grueling. Long nights crunching numbers, second-guessing decisions, wondering if I had risked everything on the wrong dream. But slowly, people began to notice. Customers trickled in, bloggers wrote glowing features, and word spread. By the 6th month, Carter's Charm had broken even. By the 9th, it was thriving, buzzing with shoppers, its name whispered in the city as a fresh, exciting destination for style. A feature in a local magazine hailed Carter's charm as Salt Lake's new gem, and for the first time in years, I felt a spark of pride that burned deep and steady. Life near Dad and Aunt Ellen gave me something I hadn't expected: a family, small but real. Dad, now retired, spent his mornings in the garden and his afternoons dropping by the boutique with coffee in hand. His laughter, once rare, echoed through our Sunday dinners, where Aunt Ellen would regale us with travel stories or tease him about his questionable taste in ties. We weren't perfect. The grief over Kristen and Linda lingered like a bruise that never fully healed. But we were honest with each other now, and that honesty, raw, sometimes uncomfortable, was the glue holding us together. I didn't hear much from Kristen or Linda anymore. The court-ordered restitution came in drips, small and sporadic. Kristen had sold off her Mercedes and designer treasures, scraping together what she could, while Linda managed on her modest clerical paycheck. They lived quietly on the outskirts of town, shadows of who they had once been. I didn't wish them harm, but I couldn't bring myself to bridge the distance. Their choices had drawn a line between us that could never be erased. One evening, as I locked up the boutique, I lingered at the counter sketching ideas for a new clothing line. Outside, the hum of the city felt like a gentle reminder: life goes on. My thoughts drifted to the money, the $800,000 that gave me this chance, and the $200,000 that had nearly destroyed us. It was never just about the dollars, it was about what they stood for. Kristen and Linda's greed had cost them everything: family, trust, stability. Their fall had shown me the truth of what happens when ambition turns selfish, when desire curdles into betrayal. And yet, the lesson for me wasn't only about loss, it was about truth, facing it, living it. That truth rebuilt what was broken. It carried me through the long nights of balancing books, through moments of doubt, and into a life I could finally call my own. As I turned the key in the shop's lock, I looked up at the Salt Lake City skyline, its lights twinkling against the dark silhouette of the mountains. This was my home now, my future, built not on stolen wealth, but on the foundation of lessons learned the hard way. Greed destroys, but honesty endures.